are back with comedian Dave Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So my little daughter went in last night and received 12 stitches from the plastic surgeon. 12 fucking stitches in that little lip. Jesus Christ. I think it was 8 in her lip and then 4 in her nose or something. I can't really see it properly, but my wife said she got some in her nose. And yeah, it seemed like a bit of a fucking ordeal. They had to put her under. My wife couldn't go into the room and my daughter was just screaming. The doctors said she put up a pretty good fight too. So that got done. Thank God they were in India for that, because that's one of those things where in Australia, the local GP or whoever the fuck would have just done it themselves. But in India, you can find a specialist. So she got a specialist pediatric plastic surgeon. Like, they super specialize there. Like, he does plastic surgery just for like the kids. And the anesthetist, however the fuck you say it, they were a pediatric anesthetist as well. So really, it's like first class healthcare. You don't really think of India like that, but seriously, it's pretty fucking good being able to access the specialists. I've been saying it for years. In Australia, it's fucking impossible to see a specialist. In India, you can see a specialist on the day, any specialist. They did have to pull a couple of strings to get this particular surgeon out on a Sunday, but still, if it wasn't him, we could have got someone else. But luckily we got him. They said there's going to be a line on her lip, but she will heal. She's young and her skin is soft. She's got good skin and they reckon it will heal nicely. And now she's got a scar on her lip like Dad's. Hers was from falling over as a 4-year-old. Mine was from getting bitten by a drunk Irish guy in the toilet. Not quite the same, but you know, results similar. So really it was very lucky that that happened in India. And my wife's sister's around as well. She's fully pregnant, but she's still a doctor and she's on it. Especially for her niece. Apparently she got in there and they had given her the wrong antibiotics and my wife's sister was going mental. So an angry, pregnant doctor just fucking lighting the joint up. So she got well looked after. I spoke to her before. She just wants to get back out there and start playing again. Anyway, fucking, it's just 3 more days. You know, I woke up this morning. It's Monday morning. And I'm like, there's 4 days. I just need to get through 4 fucking days of work. And goddamn, fucking today dragged. It just kept going and going and going. Like fucking every Monday. But it is Monday and you know what that means. It's Ask Boyle time. So if you have a question you would like answered by one of the greatest minds of the generation or any generation, comedian, philosopher, crane operator, waterproofer, Boyle, then head to my website. It's all there. The Ask Boyle shit's there. You'll see it. Just fish around. Fucked Up Friday section there as well. Send in your stories. Join the Patreon. Do it all at boylecomedy.com. Anyway, let's get to this week's Ask Boyle. So this week's Ask Boyle was sent in by Brit, a very old friend of the podcast. She's been around forever. Anyway, here is her question. Hey Boyle, been a while. It has been a while actually. I am 1.5 years into motherhood and have opted out of vaccinating. Been reading heaps about the microbiome and the havoc vaccines reap on it. I know you were anti the COVID vaccine and am wondering whether you got the plethora of vaccines for your kids. It's super expensive to get into childcare if you've opted out. not being eligible for government subsidy here in Australia, there's constant social and external pressures, and just wanted to hear your expertise. Big love, Brit. Well, Miss Murphy, you have come to the right place. If there is one subject I am an expert in, that is vaccinations. I should really, at the start of Ask Boyle, go comedian, philosopher, crane operator, waterproofer, vaccine expert. Hello, Boyle. So that's a very interesting question because, well, let me tell you what I did with my kids. So with my son, what happened was, so my son had just been born and I was at the hospital, and I forget what vaccines you get as soon as you're born, but the nurse came up to me and was like, would you like your son to get the HPV Gardasil vaccine? And I'd read some shit about it years ago. I didn't know much about it. I just knew it was causing dramas for teenage kids. And it's HPV. I'm like, what the fuck does a newborn fucking kid need HPV for? So like my natural instinct was to go, no. But I hadn't done enough research to be confident about it. So my initial reaction to the nurse was like, no. And she sort of like raised her eyebrows, and I'm like, I don't really want to get my kid vaccinated. Like first thing, like he's 1 hour old. And she's like, no, I understand. I definitely understand. And I'm like, what would you do? Like, what do you reckon about this HPV thing? And she's like, if it was up to me, and this isn't advice, but I wouldn't give it to him. So I'm like, yeah, fuck that. Fuck the HPV thing. And so I ditched that one. I ditched the whooping cough. I don't know if the kid is meant to take it, but I remember that there being a little bit of an argument about that with my wife because I didn't want to take it. So I didn't take the whooping cough. I didn't let my kid get the whooping cough. And that's right. This is what happened. I didn't let him get anything actually initially, and we were putting it off. I was putting it off. I'm like, no. And I think there's some 6-week vaccines. And my wife wanted him to get it. And I was arguing no. And then my wife was like, but we're going to India. And I was like, yeah, actually, maybe a few vaccines might do the trick if you go into India, because India is a different fucking game. So he ended up getting the 6-week vaccines, and then he went to India and did the full course, because my wife's sister is a doctor, and she's like, look, we're in fucking India. There's still smallpox, there's still leprosy, there's still everything here. So you better get him fucking vaccinated. And I was like, all right. I was still hesitant as well, even then, but I wasn't confident enough in my stance and my research, which was almost zero, to send my newborn son to India unvaccinated. So I don't know where that leaves me in my ideology. I suppose it sort of leaves me in no man's land, where I'm like, yeah, I don't believe in vaccines in Australia where everything's like pretty sweet. But as soon as I go to somewhere where you can get shit, I'm like, vaccines are a must. We have to take our vaccines. So I don't know if that helps at all. I don't even know how I feel about vaccines. I've never really looked into it. I'm just going with a little bit of gut instinct and a little bit of like, yeah, why the fuck do they need so many? You know what I mean? It's another one of those like beliefs I have that I've done no research on, but it's in my head and I believe it for some reason, and I'm not sure how it got in there. I mean, back in the conspiracy theory days, there was a lot of shit about vaccines and stuff. Maybe that's it, but my son did the full course. He didn't get any of the hepatitis ones, I don't think. Neither did my daughter, but the same thing with my daughter. We were going to India when she was small. I think we went there when she was like 5 months old or something. And in the middle of COVID too. So she got all her vaccines, like the diphtheria and all that sort of shit, but no HPV, no whooping cough, no influenza, none of that shit, no hepatitis, definitely no COVID. So I'm not too sure how I feel about all that. A friend of mine, she's a naturopath and she didn't get her kids vaccinated at all. And they seem to have turned out fine. It's one of those things though, if I was going to make a big statement, I would have to spend like 6 to 9 months investigating it, which I never did. And that's pretty much how I behaved as well, like someone who didn't do any research and is just going off hunches here and there. My son's gone through 2 courses of the rabies vaccine as well. He got bit by a street dog in India and he got bitten by a house dog in the face in India. And that was 3 years apart or 4 years apart. So he had to do 2. And yeah, with something like that, you're not really questioning the efficacy of the vaccines. You're like, get it into him now, because if we don't get it into him and this dog just so happens to have rabies, if it's not in like 48 hours, then he's dead. And it's a slow, horrifically painful death over like 3 to 6 months. And there's nothing you can do about it. So get the fucking rabies vaccine into you. And I remember my wife's sister telling us about vaccines, because I think I was like, fuck vaccines or something. I said some real ignorant shit. And she was like, we saw this guy came into the hospital and we couldn't figure out what he was sick from, but he kept on getting sicker. And eventually we figured out that it was tetanus. He had never had his tetanus shot, which is just like one of those random fucking vaccines that you don't really ever give a fuck about. You're like, yeah, tetanus, whatever. What even is it? But apparently it's a horrific death. You just slowly disintegrate. You become paralyzed, then all your organs melt or something. It didn't sound fun. So my wife's sister was always like scaring me with that shit, especially in India. Like, you see people with nubs for legs and you're like, how did that happen? Like, I've seen people with smallpox and it's not fucking pretty. So yeah, I would go with whatever you're comfortable with your level of research. I got to a level of research where I was comfortable saying no. But when I was pushed, and people gave me examples of what happens, and because we were going to India, I folded like a fucking house of cards. So yeah, that's my official stance on vaccines. If it's a scary place with lots of disease, I'll take the vaccines. If it's not a scary place, then fuck vaccines. I don't know how that fucking ideology affects the wider community. I have heard some stuff that some of these like supposedly dead diseases are coming back because people aren't taking the vaccines, but I always chalk that up to a hoax to try and get us to take the vaccines. So that's where my line of thinking is. Also, probably, and this is like the conspiracy theorist in me, if you're gonna get your kids the vaccine, go to the fucking richest suburb in Australia to get the vaccines. You want to get that clean, rich people's fucking vaccine. You don't want dirty, out west vaccine, if you know what I mean. You want Vaucluse vaccine. You don't want Mount Druitt vaccine. If you're in Melbourne, that's the equivalent of saying you want fucking Camberwell vaccine. You don't want Frankston vaccine, if you know what I mean. Anyway, fucking use that information however you like. I hope it helped. Congratulations on the baby. That'll do for tonight, and I'll see you the fuck later.